Hello. So here we are today to talk about ADHD and neurodiversity, especially in young adults. I would like to start to introducing myself. Setting the scene a bit. I'm Vicente Pineda. I'm here as I'm a board member of ADHD Europe, representing FEAADAH. FEAADAH is the national umbrella organization for ADHD people from Spain. And also apart from that, I'm in FEAADAH because I'm also a board member of the local NGO from my city, which is Granada, south of Spain. For focusing on ADHD and behavioral disorders. Well, setting a bit the scenes as a brief introduction to the topic we are going to discuss today with our panelists. We, like from ADHD Europe, research has shown that there's a shortage on the transitions from kids or teenagers with ADHD when they're becoming young adults, and then especially when they are transitioning to adulthood. We can see that there's no services, or there's a lack of services, or a worse quality on the service provided by psychologists, psychiatrists when they are moving in this transition, and that leads sometimes to even sometimes stopping the treatment, psychological treatment, medication, and so on. We can see as well that the ADHD continuing to adulthood, more or less in 75% of the cases. And not only that, we can see as well that there might be other comorbidities that might develop in the adulthood, since, as we know as well, living in like the life that you have to live and the responsibility that you got as an adult are completely different, or different in a way that when you are a teenager or a kid. Especially this case is pretty important when the people were not diagnosed when they were teenagers. As a matter of fact as well, we can see that a lot of adults are not being diagnosed, and they ended up knowing that they got ADHD. Because, for example, the children are diagnosed with ADHD and they relate with the experience and the troubles that their kids are having now. And from there is where they start thinking, okay, maybe I should get a diagnosis or check it because maybe I got ADHD. This has tremendous impact on the life of people with ADHD, especially considering as well that sometimes the problem with psychologists and psychiatrists is like they don't get an education, and they don't get the tools or the knowledge in order to address these issues, or to address or to treat people or adults or young adults with ADHD. And that is completely crucial because as I said, like the difficulties are different, and this need to be fixed as well. Moreover, as well, sometimes that we can, like the things that we can see as well in many countries in Europe is that when you are a teenager, sometimes the service is public, or at least you got way more resources or way more psychologists or psychiatrists, even as well in the private sector that can treat you. The problem with adults is that most of the countries, the public sector is almost inexistent as well, and that means that they got to go to the private sector. Not only that, but also in medications, we can see that the medication that these teenagers were taking as a kids, as a teenager to treat their ADHD is no longer available, or at least is not reimbursed. So what this means is that we are setting a burden, economic burden on adults with ADHD, that leads most of them, like a lot of times, to these people quitting the treatment. Of course, that leads to a lot of problems in adulthood, from problems in relationships, emotions, substance abuse, and dangerous actions as well that they can take in their life. We can see as well that most of the people, or a lot of people that they transitions is, as we said, we got a lack of knowledge and treatment from psychiatrists and general practitioners as well. They develop other psychological disorders, such as anxiety or depression and so on, and they are treated on these problems as well. But at the end, the root cause of this is caused by ADHD. So at the end, okay, we are like cutting the tree, but at the end, we are not cutting the root of the tree. So we are not cutting the root of the problem. We should address actually the main root cause of these problems in order to fix and in order to have a beautiful tree growing, basically. Now I would like to welcome. We got a panelist, a huge group of panelists, and I would like to welcome them and let them introduce themselves and also setting the scene a bit. So, Stephen and Sophie, if you want to go.
Thank you so much, Vincent, and thank you for your introduction. So my name's Stephen Ortega. I'm from the ADHD Foundation Neurodiversity charity in Liverpool in the UK. I'm really privileged to be here to speak today as a panelist. One of my roles at the ADHD Foundation is I'm a specialist counsellor. I support young people aged 11 to 24 therapeutically in one-to-one and group sessions. I'm also a coordinator of the National Neurodiversity Youth Council and project manager for a county-wide project, which is the Gloucestershire Youth Neurodiversity Project as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'll talk a little bit more about each one of those strands in a little bit as well. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sophie. I work for the ADHD Foundation Neurodiversity charity in the UK as well. I work therapeutically in primary schools and secondary schools. And I also help coordinate the National Neurodiversity Youth Council and also coordinate the Neurodiversity Friendly Choir as well. I'm going to pass over to Logan, who's one of our ambassadors.
Hello, I'm Logan Gibbons, and I'm really excited to be here today. I'm a 16-year-old and I'm a public speaker. I advocate for neurodiversity, focusing on ADHD awareness. My involvement in this community began with my own experiences with ADHD, which I was diagnosed with when I was 11. Before my diagnosis, I often felt very different, but couldn't understand why. School was very challenging, and a few years after my diagnosis, I eventually left due to struggling with my mental health. Once I was diagnosed, it was kind of like a puzzle piece started coming together, helping me so difficult. After that, I knew I wanted to help others who might be going through similar experiences. So I became involved in advocacy work. And then I've been a part of the National Neurodiversity Youth Council and contributed to the ADHD Hub Gloucestershire. My goal is to make sure young people don't feel alone, and we continue pushing for better understanding and support for all levels of ADHD. Thank you. I'd like to pass this over to Ynes.
We also got another panelist as well, but there was some technical problems with the internet. So as soon as she joins, she can introduce herself and we'll talk a bit about her life. Meanwhile, if you want, we can move to the questions, and then once Ynes is back, we can come back to her. What do you think? Let's go, right? Okay. Now we got Stephen. I do believe he got a presentation to share. So if you want.
Yeah, I'll just have an attempt at putting this. Oh, there we go. That's all. Perfect. Yeah. So, like I said before, a little bit about the National Neurodiversity Youth Council. The National Neurodiversity Youth Council is runs all the way across the UK. We've got ambassadors representing different charities all across the country. It started off in November 2022. The ambassadors' first time together was in February 2023. None of them had actually met each other face to face previously, but when they came together, it was absolutely magic. It's the first of its kind across the UK. I'm not sure what that looks like internationally. I haven't done any research, but the Youth Council was put together about creating a forum, creating a space for young people to be able to advocate for themselves. So like we were saying before, myself and Sophie, we are just facilitators, we are coordinators. Everything that the Youth Council wants to do is about work that they feel passionate about. When they came together, we spoke about different strands, talking about health, employment and education, challenges that all of these young people might have come across in their life, and how they would like to affect change with that. So this is about creating a platform to amplify their voice and give them a space where they can facilitate that. I'm not going to talk about what they've achieved because I'll let the ambassadors speak for themselves about that, because this is all about empowering young people, which I'm really passionate about. I probably should have mentioned in my introduction before, I'm neurodiverse myself, so I have ADHD and dyslexia. I also have 2 children who are neurodiverse as well. So this is very much a passion of mine, being involved with the National Neurodiversity Youth Council and empowering young people. I'd love my children to be able to aspire to all of these ambassadors, because they are all incredible. They all have a variety of different skills, all have completely different lived experiences. And we know that neurodiversity isn't a one-size-fits-all profile, which means that this strength of difference is really empowering. I'm going to pass you over to Sophie now, who will take over the next couple of slides. Thank you.
You hear me? Oh, there we go. So as Stephen has mentioned there, the National Neurodiversity Youth Council is made up of around 21 ambassadors across the UK, and they have all achieved many great things over the last couple of years. And some of them have kind of given us their feedback and their thoughts around what the Youth Council means to them. Most of them know that being part of this Youth Council, it allows them to have that space to feel confident, and it allows them to feel comfortable around one another and let that guard down, because they're around like-minded people. The Youth Council has provided them that opportunity to spread that awareness that they really want to get out, and that message across the UK, but also internationally as well. We've had lots of opportunities where they've been able to get across the country and spread that awareness. For many of them, it's about that safe space for them, but also being able to have that platform to be able to go out and speak to people like their local MPs, or also going into their local schools and talking about their lived experiences to help other young people feel comfortable and confident within their own skin. But the main thing for them is having that platform to being able to go out and feel like they're being heard, which is an amazing thing for them. I'm going to pass back over to Stephen, I think.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you very much. And then we'll move on to this final slide that we'll share. So this is an ADHD Foundation resource that can be found on the ADHD website. This booklet is really empowering for young people for lots of different reasons. It talks about lots of different understanding ADHD. As I mentioned before, I'm part of the National Neurodiversity Youth Council as a coordinator, but I also facilitate some support county-wide in Gloucestershire, which is part of the UK. And most of the training that I'm delivering as part of that relates to this book. It's talking about, understanding your neurodiverse difference, and how that knowing more about yourself, how empowering that can be for not just boys. There's also a section there that talks specifically about girls as well, and what that looks like, because we know that that's not always the same as what that might present in the classroom for boys or even girls as well. It's not always the same. Learning how to manage your ADHD and strategies to support yourself. We know that it might be different, which would be really interesting further on as we go through the webinar. When people get their medication, not necessarily all spaces are able to offer that post-diagnosis support and understanding how you can apply strategies to support yourself. So this booklet can really be really supportive for young people to be able to learn how to revise in the classroom, for example, when you're doing your studies, or being able to manage friendships and communicate with people. And a little bit about medication in there as well. So, if you haven't seen this already, there's a link on there that will be able to share and have a look at that booklet online. It's really brilliant. And the work that I do in Gloucestershire, it's very much a practical base of learning all of these different things, lots of different fun activities to get to know yourself more and learn a bit more about the people around you as well. So if you haven't got a diagnosis of ADHD and you're curious that maybe there's something there, this is maybe a really good book to go and have a look at to see if there's anything in there that relates to yourself.
Okay, so following on what Stephen was sharing about the female perspective of ADHD and neurodiversity, I think we now have here Ynes, so maybe she can tell us a bit more about this and her experience.
Hi, So my name is Ynes Hernadez. I'm almost 19 years old. My dad's from Spain and Switzerland, and my mum's from England. I was born in the UK, and I was diagnosed with dyscalculia and Erlen syndrome when I was 9, and then I moved to Abu Dhabi. And since then, I've lived overseas my whole life. I've lived in China, and currently I live in Egypt. Last year, I had to get retested for dyscalculia to get accommodations for my international baccalaureate exams, and my test revealed that I may have ADHD, but that my depression and my anxiety needed to be treated first. So it wasn't an instant diagnosis. Then last month, I had to get retested again. I've suspected ADHD for a long time. As a child, me and my mum identified I would switch from hyperfixation to hyperfixation. I was obsessed with Harry Potter. I was obsessed with musicals. It was all I would talk about. And I always lost all of my stuff all the time. I would lose my water bottle, my lunchbox, my cardigan. And I struggled to not interrupt. I still do that today. And my room was always a mess. It still is. Finally, last month, I got diagnosed with ADHD. As a female, I went undiagnosed my whole life. And I struggled a lot with feeling weird and different to my peers, and I wasn't able to understand what was happening. And this made me struggle a lot with imposter syndrome. And I felt as though my achievements didn't count due to my struggles, which I couldn't quite place. I couldn't place what was happening with me. I just knew that I was struggling and that what I had achieved didn't really count. So having lived abroad, it was quite difficult for me to experience any support. And I felt quite alone. I'd never heard of anyone else who had dyscalculia until this year, actually. So I became an ambassador for the Dyscalculia Network 2 years ago when I was living in China. I sent a private message on Instagram expressing my interest, and we arranged a meeting. And then I got invited to join. It was pretty simple. I just messaged and I said, "Hi, I'm interested in being an ambassador." We arranged a meeting, and now here I am. After joining, I was then offered the amazing opportunity to be an ambassador for the Youth Council, which is a huge deal to me, as having lived for so many years without being represented, it was such an important thing for me to be able to represent other children and other teenagers and make sure that they didn't experience the same things I did. As someone who's newly diagnosed with ADHD, I still have a lot to learn about the diagnosis and about my condition, but it's been a rewarding experience for me as I've learned so much about myself, and I'm beginning to understand more about how my brain works. For example, what I previously thought was laziness, after being told it was laziness by everyone around me, I realized it was actually ADHD paralysis. I remember reading somewhere that if it was laziness, I would be having fun. And this helped me feel so seen because I spent so much of my time being stressed about the assignments I had to do, but was unable to do. And I had no idea why. It also helped me to explain some of the more confusing aspects of my life, like why it was so incredibly difficult to brush my teeth or to shower, which I had no idea why. So I then found out this was due to executive dysfunction, which is a chemical imbalance in my brain. And I finally understood why caffeine made me sleepy. But most importantly to me was the validation I felt and the skills I learned to cope with my mental illness. In China, neurodivergency is just not real. It doesn't exist. And I was told flatly so many times that I was faking and that I simply had to work harder and that I would understand maths. In Egypt, on the other hand, I attend an international school with upper-class students, which means I'm seeing the only cases of diagnosed neurodivergency in the country, as these students are able to afford it. Despite this, the topic is still very much taboo and is considered to be a bad thing. Certain diagnoses, such as Tourette's, are considered to be fake. My best friend was diagnosed with autism and revealed to me that the psychologist sat the family down and broke the news to them as if it was one of the most tragic things that could have possibly happened. Another thing I noticed in my time here was that cases where wealthy students would pay psychologists for a diagnosis in order to access certain accommodations, such as a private bathroom in university for OCD, or extra time or a laptop for dyslexia. Learning disabilities aren't treated as disabilities in Egypt, so the lack of education prevents people from understanding the importance of accommodations. Also, I hear a lot of slurs and disrespectful comments, and it's also quite normal here as the lack of understanding about the seriousness of it happens a lot. ADHD in particular is viewed through a stereotypical lens in my experience internationally. Most people associate ADHD with young, typically white boys who are hyperactive. And being a girl, my experiences were already dismissed as I didn't fit the criteria. Having inattentive rather than hyperactive ADHD also resulted in my experiences being labeled as pure laziness rather than there being an understanding of me experiencing ADHD. My whole life, I've always felt different, like a square peg in a round hole. And so while my diagnosis didn't define me, they gave me an answer to who I am and why I am the way I am. However, this answer didn't seem to be enough for the rest of the world that I lived in, to my community who were meant to support me, and instead denied me my accommodations due to their lack of understanding or knowledge. So having grown up internationally, despite having a diagnosis, and being me knowing specifically what's going on, the rest of the world still took it as an excuse or simply denied me the support that I needed. I'm now going to hand over to Logan, who's going to talk a little bit about his experiences with ADHD.
Getting my ADHD diagnosis at 11 was a major turning point for me. Before that, I often felt like I was living up to expectations, whether it was in school or with other people. The diagnosis helped me understand my brain works differently, and that's okay. Since then, I've focused on using my experiences to help others with their ADHD journey and understanding that we're all in this together. I think now we're going to be moving on to questions, and I'd like to hand it over to them.
Okay, so moving to questions. First, I got a question for Sophie and Stephen from the UK Council, and also maybe the answer we can use it in other countries in Europe as inspiration. So, why do you think that the UK needs a national youth council? What does it mean?
Sorry, I'll go first if that's okay, and then I'll maybe hand over to some of the ambassadors about their experience and why they feel like they need it as well. I just wanted to thank Ynes and Logan for bearing all about your lived experience there. It's really empowering to hear the journey that you've had. So thank you for sharing that. Why does the UK need a National Neurodiversity Youth Council? I think it's because it's empowering young people, giving them a platform and a voice. What we've experienced as part of the, since launching the National Neurodiversity Youth Council is people are starting to listen. I think that sometimes when people have done some young voice work, maybe it's not been truly heard and maybe been a little bit tokenistic, whereas the work that we do is, I'm not saying that that's the work that everyone does, but the work that we do is for co-production about the National Neurodiversity Youth Council. It's all led by them. What did they want to do to affect change? We know that there was some of our ambassadors that are not here to talk today. They were trying to get into schools and raise awareness of their lived experience and what would make a difference for them in their education journey. But the doors were pretty much closed for that. They weren't really offering them that space and that opportunity. Since accessing the National Neurodiversity Youth Council and being an ambassador on the National Neurodiversity Youth Council, them doors have completely swung wide open. They want the young people to come in and talk more about what their experiences on heart and how they can support their young people in their setting. So there was one of our ambassadors that has tics and Tourette's, had a horrific experience of in school and still even in adult life, and really wanted to make a change for young people in the school that she went to, and has since been back in that setting and delivered a presentation about how school can support them, but also educating the young people on what supportive strategies they can take on board as well. So doing that holistic approach around the young person and being able to raise awareness for teachers, being able to raise awareness for the young people and also for the parents at home as well, to give them a support network around that young person. So that's why I feel that the UK needs a National Neurodiverse Youth Council to give young people those opportunities and have a voice. I don't know if Ynes or Logan, if you've got anything that you wanted to add to that, what maybe, what that has meant to you as being part of the Youth Council.
Honestly, being part of the Youth Council is probably one of the best experiences for me, because I was finally able to share what I went through as someone whose diagnosis has been fake their whole life. And I was able to support other students and other teenagers and even parents. I've had family members reach out to me and say, my child's been recently diagnosed with dyscalculia. What can I do to help? And I've just had such a great experience working with the Youth Council to be able to share my life story and my diagnosis story, and to be able to share coping mechanisms and different things for people on a platform that will be able to support so many people.
Thank you.
I'd like to add to that. Oh, sorry, Stephen. I'd like to add to that as well. I would say a National Neurodiversity Youth Council is very important because it gives young people a voice in decision making, which can lead to safer and more vibrant communities. I feel when I joined the Youth Council, I always felt very alone growing up. And when I joined, it felt like more of an inclusive community, something that I was actually a part of, that I was more listened to while I was in. And it helps not only my mental health a lot, but it satisfied me knowing that I made people who felt like myself when I was younger feel more included.
Thank you so much. I don't know if does someone else wanna add something else? If not, we can move on to the next question.
Yeah, I think that the only thing I would add to that is, as part of the Youth Council, I think that the advocacy work is absolutely amazing, and every single ambassador, including Logan and Ynes, do incredible things to raise awareness and support young people in communities all across the country and internationally, Ynes, because we know that you're not in the UK. But also, I think that this is a friendship, I think, that has developed as part of the Youth Council, not just what the advocacy work that they're doing to raise awareness for other people, but for them, something for themselves as well, a safe space for them to talk freely with like-minded young people of a similar age that may have had a very similar lived experience. It's just really validating and really empowering to know that you're not alone in this world. So I think that's probably something else that the Youth Council does offer to our ambassadors as well.
Definitely. I feel like I made a lot of friends through the Youth Council. I was able to talk to people who maybe they hadn't had the same experiences as me, but they'd all been treated differently by society. They'd all been labeled as stupid or as weird. And I knew that they would understand and that they wouldn't judge me for being different. And so I made so many friends through this. And I feel like I've had such a safe space to share my experiences.
Yeah, completely. This sounds like such an amazing work, actually. Not only like to improve the society in ADHD as well, but as you said, like to battle stigma and be with like others that got similar issues and problems. And I hope like we can take this as an example of good practice, and we can reproduce it as well in other countries, because it's super important to have these open conversations in order to improve as a society and to be more inclusive as well. Also, like related to this, like moving to the next question, maybe as we got like different people here from different as well, like experiences and countries as well, so on. Maybe we can share what like 3 small things that people can do in their like everyday lives, let's say, to make that will have a difference on people with neurodiversity. So, if you want to add something there.
Logan, do you want to take anything from that? Is 3 things that maybe you experienced growing up that you would like to share that would make a difference for young people going through that same situation?
Yeah, so I would like to say for young people, it's 3 things you can do is definitely being respectful, listening, and talking to them more about how they feel. As I've said already, growing up, I always felt like I was never like very listened to. I was always like struggling with my mental health, and it just seemed like no one cared, and I had no one to talk to me about how I was feeling. It was more do this and get it done how it is. So definitely, yeah, talk to them about how they're feeling with their neurodiversity and make sure how they're feeling is good.
I would also say don't judge people. If you see someone and they're struggling with something that seems easy to you, or they're acting in a way that seems different to you, not to judge people, because you have no idea why they are acting the way they are, or why they're struggling with what they're struggling with. So I guess you just have to be respectful and to just accept that people are different, and then that's okay.
I love that. Like, so far we've got listen. Yeah. We've had don't judge, is definitely another one. I think that, what would I add to both of those? I think following things through might be something that both of you might agree with. You know, like when people say that they're going to do something for you, you know, implementing those reasonable adjustments, or whether they're going to make adaptations to support you, whether that's at home or at school or at work. Following those things through can be really empowering as well. I think that some people think that they put a reasonable adjustment in place and it's short-lived. So maybe just consistently following those reasonable adjustments through would be really supportive as well.
To answer the comment that was coming up at the bottom, I know that medicine isn't something that's easily accessible to everyone. I've struggled with depression and anxiety for my whole life. I only just recently got put on medication. But I found that trying to find even the smallest things to support yourself, and talking to people are the best things to do. I know that medicine isn't going to solve everything. Even if you are on it, it doesn't solve everything. You've got to still work and try to push past it, because at some point it might stop working. So I feel like the best thing to do is just to try and find the little things that you can conquer every single day. For example, for me, I struggle with the motivation to take care of myself sometimes. I found that an app that I use is called Finch. You get a little pet bird, and every time you take care of yourself, you take care of the bird. And this was really motivating for me, because it actually helped me to get out of bed and to go and make myself something to eat and things like that, because I felt like I wasn't doing it for myself anymore. So if that's something that helps you, if you have a pet, maybe motivate yourself. If you don't get out of bed, your pet won't get food. Something like that. Find something to motivate yourself, no matter what it is, even if it seems silly. If that works for you, it works for you. I'm very sorry about the fact that the access to the medication has been hard for you, and that they've been treating you harshly. I guess the best thing to do is just keep advocating for yourself, because if you don't speak on your own behalf, no one will. And that way, no one's going to listen. So the one thing I'm going to say is just keep pushing, keep talking, keep speaking, keep advocating for yourself, because it's the most important thing.
That actually just warmed my heart, Ynes, you sharing all that information. I'm not going to lie. That, Jamal, I hope that that's really helpful for you. And I cannot second enough everything that Ynes has just shared. The booklet that we shared at the start, that talks a lot about those things that Ynes has spoke about. It's talking about being able to look after yourself. We know that nutrition can really be really supportive if you're unmedicated and medicated for ADHD or any neurodiverse difference. So, making sure that those balances are right within what we're putting into our system can be really supportive. Sleep strategies, that's again looking after our well-being and stuff like that. So I can't second enough everything that Ynes has just put forward. And if there's anything we've got a National Neurodiversity Youth Council handle on Instagram that we'll share later on. Please feel free to contact or send us a message and follow us, and we're more than happy to share further strategies as well. You're more than welcome, Jamal. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if we got more questions. If not, I was thinking that maybe as like to summarize all the ideas that we have, maybe we can have to a quick sum up, every one of us, so we can stick in our minds like the key concepts. So I don't know, Logan, if you want to start, for example, and we can go around. Yeah. Especially focus as well. Like, how do you think like in the future we can things can change? So yeah, let's go. The floor is yours.
Well, obviously, it's going to be very difficult to make change in the future, but it is ultimately what we're out to do. One of the big things personally that I want to help do is changing school systems. I've struggled a lot in my school, and I was always promised things and told there'd be changes that never actually happened. I was told they would happen like in front of my support leader, and then as soon as she had left, the changes never did. Nothing ever went through with them, or they would change for like a week and change back. I think that requests and promises like that need to be more monitored in school systems, and they need to be brought out and pursued more.
I definitely agree with that. I've had cases where I've been told that I'm entitled to a separate room, and then I wasn't given it on the day of the exam, and I had a panic attack, and the entire exam was ruined for me. Simple things like that that seem minor changes can be such a huge deal for neurodivergent people, and I guess sticking
I think
because just like you're learning how to support us, we're learning how our condition works every single day. It changes. There's more things that we learn. So if you constantly ask us how to support us, we can tell you. Again, to answer the comment from Jamal, you said that the biggest thing that had an impact on you was to find an online group. I definitely think online groups can be very helpful, because sometimes you're going to meet someone who, kind of like with the youth council, I guess, you're going to be discussing with people who have experience and who are willing to share how to support others and their techniques and their coping strategies and methods and things like that. So just like how us as a council have supported other people, I think online groups and online friends and things like that can be very helpful, as they'll give you techniques that you can use to support yourself through anxiety, depression, or even compulsive behaviors. I can answer this one as well. How did you feel when you found out you had ADHD? Honestly, relieved. I was very happy to have finally gotten the answer that I have been waiting for my whole life. It was quite a happy moment for me, because I felt like I finally had an answer, and I felt like I finally understood what was going on in my life. And I've just felt so relieved that I was going to finally be able to find the strategies in order to support myself. And I was able to get the support that I needed from school as well.
Yeah, I 100% agree there. When I found out I had ADHD, it was like so much finally made sense. I was always questioning myself and my ability to do things, and I was always wondering why. And I always took it quite personally, to be honest. I was struggled a lot, and I just thought I was stupid. So when I got diagnosed, it was a big eye-opener to me, and it helped me a lot.
Thanks for both sharing that, Logan and Ynes. Thank you for coming with the question, Leo. I think that I have a diagnosis of ADHD and dyslexia. I was diagnosed with dyslexia first when I was 13 in high school, and never thought anything else past that. I just assumed that my behaviors related to my dyslexia, and masking and trying to hide. And it wasn't until I was an adult and I was trying to access lots of typing and writing written tasks that I realized this is more, there's something different here. That's not just dyslexia. I was struggling to sit still. Some of them were really long tasks. And that was where I recognized that actually there's potentially something else going on here. As I grew up longer, I realized that it's highly chance it's ADHD, and I was coping. But similar to what Ynes was saying, as an adult, I really needed a diagnosis to be able to access further support. So being able to get reasonable adjustments put in place in work, and being able to get contact our government, such as has an access to work scheme. So being able to get some resources there to support me in thriving in my workspace as well. So getting a diagnosis was a big game changer for me. Really did open lots of doors, and maybe understand myself a lot more. Yeah.
In my case, I was diagnosed with dyscalculia before I was diagnosed with ADHD. I was diagnosed at 9, so I kind of had no idea what it was. I just knew that I had it, but I didn't know what it was until I turned about 13, when I started to finally understand what it was. And I always knew that there was something else going on, but I wasn't sure. And then, it opened up so many opportunities for me. Like now I'm allowed to use a laptop during my exams, whereas I wasn't before. And I'm allowed to have breaks during exams in order to help my focus keep on top. And as long with the extra time that I was allowed anyway, these adjustments have really helped me to increase my score in exams. I went from failing to passing with 32 points in the IB, I think it was. So I'm doing very well at the moment, and I'm really proud of myself. And I'm really grateful for having been given the support that I needed.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. So following on that, sorry.
Vincent, I'm just going to come in just to kind of just make sure that we're covering all bases on here, because there are lived experiences, and I have worked with lots of people where getting a diagnosis can be a negative for somebody. That can really send them, into a bit of a low mood. So if you're asking for yourself, it's thinking about what's important for you. If you feel like having a diagnosis and understanding if that's something you're exploring for yourself or someone a little bit like what Ynes said and Logan about what 3 things are important to us: listening, maybe talking to somebody and finding out what would be the benefits of finding out, what would be the cons of finding out, and exploring what's best for yourself. So just to put that out as an alternative perspective and view.
Yeah, following on that, I wanted to also add in here the perspective of being diagnosed super early, because from my experience in Spain, there's many people that have been diagnosed when they're super young, let's say 5 to 6 years old. It's quite an interesting ride, because at the beginning, especially when you are in primary school, bullying, and you got all these stigma labels and so on people tend to feel bad, because at the end they feel like, okay, why do I have this? It's completely wrong with me. They're starting to learn how to cope, how to deal with ADHD and understanding themselves, and they just feel different, and they don't want to feel different. Everyone want to fit in a group. But then after that, I will say, once you start learning what is ADHD, how do you got to live with it, and how do you treat it, you can start taking advantage to it. And I always like to say that, ADHD is difficult to control. It's like a bull that is going around like it's crazy and can destroy this. But once you control it, you got a lot of power and a lot of energy to do whatever you want to. And that is completely clear as well in society. You can see a lot of people in multiple sectors, that you see the top people in that sector, and you find people with ADHD, because we also got the hyper focus, and we got that energy that it's like having an engine that is never stopping, basically, that never runs out of fuel, more or less. So yeah, I will say in some cases it's kind of like a ride. It's kind of like sometimes you don't want to have ADHD and you have the conditions, but at the end you like okay, I like it, I will say that once you learn how to deal with it and how to cope with it, it's more like a superpower than actually a disadvantage. But it takes time and it takes a lot of effort. Also, well, as I said, like I'm from Spain as well. Well, I said it at the beginning. Talking about, and also this is related as well with what Ynes was sharing about accommodations in education and so on. Well, in Spain, for example, we don't got much accommodations where you are young. There's some resources, but I think there's not enough. And sometimes people don't even know that the resources exist. So they can have the resource available, but if they don't know they can apply or up to it, it's not available. It's not existing at all. It's actually anecdotal because most people will think that when you're in primary school or actually even high school, you are gonna be more taken care of, like because you are like younger, so people will have to be like more on you, like taking more care of you. But it's actually not the case in Spain in most of the cases, of course. We find that when people actually transition, people with ADHD or neurodiverse people, or even some other disabilities in general, blind people as well, deaf people, when they transition from high school to university, in university you got way more accommodations. In some of the universities in Spain now it's becoming widespread. It still needs a lot of work to be done there. And you got these accommodations as well. Well, I also got dyscalculia, so I also need a computer to write exams. And I've never got a computer in my life until I reached university. I found myself as well like doing exams in high school where people could not understand my handwriting. And well, they were just putting a mark based on something that they didn't understand, but they were not providing a computer. I thought I was never gonna have this accommodation, especially because at least in Spain, it's widespread that when you reach university, you are like numbers. Like you don't have a personalized treatment. And to be honest, far from that. Well, I studied in Spain and also in the UK, and also especially in the UK, where I studied in Scotland, in Edinburgh. And you can see that there's a lot of accommodations, and it's way more accessible than how it was in high school. I think we could also replicate that in primary education and in high school, especially in primary education, because I think it's one of the most important aspects of our society. We are building the pillars of the future of our country, world, and society in general. And we need to address everyone with their different needs. That's completely true. So yeah, that's that I wanted to share as well from the Spanish perspective. Yeah, maybe Sophie, you can go. Maybe talk a bit about the UK situations.
Yeah, so I think in the UK, obviously, Logan has spoken a little bit about his lived experience within the education system. I think it's getting there. I think the more knowledge that is being shared, the more best practice is being carried out within education. I think there's probably still a long way to go, but I think there are small steps to getting there. But the work that the Youth Council are doing, that's creating a huge momentum in that change as well. So getting the ambassadors within education and sharing their lived experiences, that's doing it on a much smaller scale, but hopefully we'll get there where we can roll it out more nationally and make sure that when teachers are being trained, that they're getting that knowledge before they are going into schools and actually teaching in front of classrooms.
Something that I feel like really supported me was the sunflower lanyard system. I was able to take my time at the airport and unpack slowly and make sure I didn't lose anything and pack everything in again, and able to go through everything step by step so I wouldn't get overwhelmed. I know they have something similar in Spain, so it was quite beneficial for me this summer to get my first lanyard and to be able to use it and to get the support that I needed. In Egypt, they don't have anything like this at all. They haven't had this in China or anywhere I live, to be honest. So it's been quite beneficial for me, especially since I'm planning to study in the UK, to know that I have this as a safety net, as an option to support me through my time in university and through simple things like going shopping. making sure that I don't overspend, making sure that I get through customs quick enough to get to my flight on time. Things like that I have worried about for so long. I know that I will now have something to support me, and so that's been really helpful. To answer the comment again, I completely relate to people pleasing. I've dealt with a lot of people pleasing and anxiety, and I dealt with depression, and actually it culminated in an eating disorder. And so I struggled a lot over the years, and a diagnosis helped me to fully understand that I was doing these things in order to be able to have control over my life. I was people pleasing to make sure that the people would react the way I wanted them to, not the way that I feared that they would react. I was controlling my food intake to have some form of control. Everything that I did was for control. I had these intrusive thoughts that I had in order to try and keep control over everything. Everything was just too much. And getting a diagnosis, I was able to sit down with my therapist and do some research, and I was able to come up with a plan to attack all the problems that were happening in my life and to be able to get rid of them, essentially. And I've been doing a lot better recently. I've been finding that I can eat better. I've been finding that I can say no to people. I won't make plans that I don't want to make in order to keep someone else happy, things like that. I found that this diagnosis helped me to set boundaries and to feel safe enough to make those decisions for myself that I used to never make before.
Thank you for sharing that, Ynes, and thank you everyone for kind of talking a lot about the education system. I think that the one thing I'd just like to add to anyone that's kind of like watching or is maybe going to watch this back is kind of thinking about what's important to you. If we're thinking about ADHD, I can't help but think about the conversation around executive functional skills and how that might impact on different people in different ways, and thinking about is it planning, prioritizing, that self-monitoring, that emotional control, impulse control, working memory, task initiation, all those different things around executive functional skills can be a challenge. Every single element of those or just certain ones. So I think reflecting back on the booklet that we start at the start, that would be really good to just have a look at what executive functional skills are, because I'm kind of just throwing that word out there, and for some people that would be like, what is that? Learning what executive functional skills are and how they might impact on you. Do they impact on you? And if they do, what strategies could you implement to support you with those things? So if it's, for example, like organizational skills, like, is that, setting reminders, letting people around you know that you're setting those reminders as well. So not just putting the whole onus and pressure on yourself, getting people around you to support you, because as we start to consistently put these changes in place, they'll start to support us and make us feel better. We think, lots of things that we mentioned here are talking about well-being. If we're getting really stressed or anxious, like you were just saying there, Jamal, why are we? And is it something to do with those sort of things? And I'm maybe thinking about education at the moment, but if we're accessing an educational setting, what is the biggest barrier if we're thinking about executive functional skills? And which small goal could you set to make a change for yourself that's going to relieve a little bit of that pressure on yourself? So again, I know I feel like I'm trying to oversell this booklet, but it does kind of talk a lot about lots of different elements around ADHD and teenagers, but mainly because this is a empowering neurodiverse youth group, and mainly a lot of people maybe watching this are studying or learning, so supporting yourselves would be really good. Anybody else got anything else to add, or should we hand back to Vincent?
Yeah, completely. Like what I was reading the comment that we got down there from Jamal. That's what I was saying. Like most of the cases, I will say is like that. That at the beginning you feel like you don't fit in, and since you don't fit in because you are just different, and the thing is that you're gonna be different, and there's nothing wrong with it. Then you feel the need to follow, to keep up with the society, and to be like everyone else, like want to be normal. So yeah, it takes a while until you get to know yourself and you accept like, hey, look, I'm different and I'm embracing it, and that makes me even more worth it, because in the diversity there's like the richness of the society, I would say. And yeah, also regarding there's another problem with sorry. Go for it, Ines.
So you realize something's wrong with you, essentially, and you feel like you have to change yourself, and so you start to change all the little things about you, and it starts to feel like that you're wrong, that there's something with you that's wrong, but that's not true at all. There's nothing wrong with you. You just need to accept that, and you'll find that life comes so much easier to you once you've done that. I feel like the best way to support a friend with ADHD is to constantly remind them of the fact that there's nothing wrong with them, and to let them make mistakes sometimes. Because if I personally am always late to where I am, if I'm hanging out with my friends, if I'm always late. And my friends have kind of just learned to accept that. They tell me that we're meeting an hour earlier than we actually are, so that I get there on time. They've learned to accept that that's just who I am. And I feel like if you're friends with someone, you should learn to accept these things about them. That sometimes there are just things that they can't control, that you can't control, and that's okay. And yeah, you should just learn to accept these things. Obviously don't accept everything as well. Sometimes you can remind them like, hey, you did upset me, you did do this. I'm not saying to treat them as if they're perfect either, because they're not, but accept that there will be some mistakes that they make because of their disability, and that's not their fault, and you should learn to help support them with that. Even if it means telling them that the function starts an hour earlier than it does so that they get there on time, you've learned to support them, and they're going to be very grateful for that.
I would like to add to that as well. I feel if you have a friend who has ADHD and you're struggling with communication with them, definitely just be honest, be open with them. They're normal people. It's nothing different to how you are and how you feel. Just make sure you're open with them, make sure you talk to them, and most importantly, make sure you listen to them. But great question, Leo.
Yeah, Leo, I mean, like, this is the second time I kind of like wanted to kind of like put my little heart out where, when Ynes spoke before, answering Jamal's comment, and then you actually wanting to make that difference for your friend and be that support. Again, that warms my heart. Just similar to what Ynes and Logan have just said, just listen. You just actually being there for that person is huge for your friend. And I think that, giving them asking them, like, how can I support you? What thing can I do? That one little thing to make things easier for yourself. And if I'm thinking about people who, if he's emotionally dysregulated, do you need time and space, for example? Like, do you want me to be there next to you, or do you want me to just back off and give you 10 minutes? Thinking about, like, what's important for him. How's that going to make things a lot easier for him or her? I'm just assuming, sorry. Just communicating, yeah, absolutely, is the best one. And then it looks like we've got another comment come back. Scariest challenge for me is to see the pervasiveness of ADHD in my nuclear family, and how we as a family adapt around it without treating it. It's natural to adapt, so it's innocent but sad. Anyone wanted to add anything to that?
I mean, I've noticed there's definitely neurodivergency in my family outside of me that's gone unnoticed, to the point that if I were to bring it up, people would be surprised. They tell me like, oh no, they're not neurodivergent, because it's been so normalized in my family. We're so used to it that it feels like they can't be, because it's like, oh well, they act like that, they also act like that, we all act like that, so we can't be. And so it seems to be that I'm the only person who is, which I don't personally think is the case. And I guess it can be quite scary for you to see how other people are struggling and that they might not be getting the support that they need. But I would say just try to teach them the coping strategies and stuff that you've been taught through your diagnosis, and make sure that they have access to the resources, so that no matter what, they still have that ability to get the support if and when they find out that they do have that diagnosis.
Yeah, that's completely true. Well, I think we should wrap up. It's already 1 hour. I would like to thank especially our panelists. Thank you for joining us, for sharing such an amazing content as well, and such an insightful comments. And also thank you for the audience. Thank you for all the questions. And yeah, thank you so much.